So on that, this is a great transition. So Don, you're sitting in your office, right? And you have two options. So our guests always have to pick between two failures. It's no one is more glorious than the other. Okay. So your first option is you're sitting in your office. You have to reply to an email. There's obviously, like your entire company's on it. But you have to respond to it to just let your boss know, hey, I can't go or I can't whatever, and here's why. And it's a really personal reason. And you were a genius. You hit reply all and you sent it out to everybody. And now
nice.
everyone knows your personal business, right? And so you have that scenario. That's option one. Option two, you go to bed at night, you check your alarm, it's all set. You have to get up in the morning for a really important meeting with your boss's boss and just all the way to the top. It's not anyone right? And you sleep right through it and you show up late and you have to now explain to your boss, hey, I missed this meeting. Here's why. If you had to pick either of those scenarios, not looking at them glass half full, half empty, these are both piss.
Sure.
Which one are you choosing?
I like that. I think the first one, sending out an all company-wide email. And the reason for that is because to human is to err. And we will all make mistakes for our team, to ourselves, to our partners, to our loved ones. We're going to make mistakes. And I'm thankful that the culture that my team has established, that would be more of an understanding of, man, I'm really sorry that you're going through that. Kind of a silly thing that you did the reply all, but I'm really appreciative of the culture that we have at our team where it would be I see you. It wouldn't be like look at this, look at him. It's more of, how can we pull together for our team member that's going through this challenging time? And I'd rather have that situation.
So on the flip side, if you were the boss and someone showed up late and they said, honestly, hey, I slept in, do you believe them? And what's your response?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I think back to when I was in college. I was moving into my dorm, and for some odd reason, the electrical wasn't set up in my dorm room yet. And so there was only one outlet, not even like the both of the outlets, only one part of it was. So the top one wasn't working, the bottom one was. And so we had to do like 3 or 4 different plugins or like the surge protectors.
Okay.
And so we had like 5 or 6, like everything in our room connected to one outlet. And during the night, I think one of us bumped it or something else like that. And our alarm clocks got knocked off, and we didn't wake up in time for our first class of our first day of university. I mean, it was horribly embarrassing. And I remember going into our lecture, and I was late. I mean, not even like 5 minutes late, not 10 minutes late. I was like 30 to 45 minutes late to this session. It's like, gosh, I gotta go, right? Because you're not used to just skipping class yet. And I remember walking in and explaining the situation, and the professor looked at me and said, "It's okay if you're hungover. Just don't lie to me." Unfortunately, I wasn't hungover, and it's like, no, you got to believe me. He's like, "Okay, freshman, sit down." But yeah, it's tough, and I think that if there was a genuine concern, that there is an opportunity for forgiveness. And like what I said earlier, none of us are perfect. To human is to err. And if there's sincerity in the tonality of that person, I think that we can all recall back to a scenario that we let situations happen. It's about how we react to those things that define us truly.
Yeah, it's funny because when you the alarm clock, like showing up late, it shouldn't be the end of the world, right? Like it's like life happens. But I think it was 2 weeks ago, I was sleeping and I woke up and I look and it's the dreaded. You just know you're like something is not
wrong.
okay.
Yeah.
Look at my alarm. It's 8:20. I'm freaking out because my wife and I both get up on my alarm. I roll over to my wife and she's like, "You got to get up." She's like, "For what?" I was like, "For work." She's like, "It's Sunday." I was like, "All right, well, I guess we don't. Church isn't for 2 more hours. We're fine." I was like, just one of those moments. So it's like, how do you get so nervous and riled up over just for a meeting, even if it's a huge sales meeting, a very important closing a client or making a decision? It's life. It happens. I think we just take it way too. I mean, if we were a lot of other cultures around the world, you show up 2 minutes late, or 10 minutes late, an hour late, 2 hours late. It's like, yeah, whatever. We're on relaxed time. So, well, I'm really excited today. Obviously, you're on the Do You Even Fail podcast, and I already failed. So this camera is looking towards you, so you can look at it if you want to talk to the audience. I keep forgetting to remind people. But today we have Don on. I've known Don Raleigh for, I think, over a year now.
I think it's coming up on 2 years now.
Yeah, coming up on 2. We've met through networking, became friends, bonded over bourbon, have had a lot of serious conversations and lighthearted ones. Today, we're hopefully going to cover that gamut as well. Before we get into any of the core of the episode, though, Don, ball in your court. Tell them a little bit about who you are as a person, your background and experience. Just saying, go, hey, I know who I'm listening to now.
Well, hey, everybody. My name is Don Raleigh III with Evolve Systems and Evolve Payment. I currently lead the sales and account management team on our organization and been involved with the organization for 8 years now, coming up on 9 in May. I grew up in the family business. The business has been around for 21 years, and I remember growing up in the family business that my parents didn't realize that it was a lot cheaper to pay for coding classes than it was for babysitters. And so growing up on the weekends, we'd go into the office and we'd learn how to code, and we didn't think anything of it. And my first role with the business was the chief babysitting officer, the CBO. I was in charge of logistics of crucial assets to and fro conference room and the office room whenever my parents had meetings. And so I had the opportunity to really get into the basics of what does it mean to be in a web development agency space. And growing up in the industry, I absolutely loved it. I mean, the ability to create positive impacts for businesses is so, I think, misunderstood from the aspect of the true difference that you can make of what does it mean to have an online billboard versus having a salesperson that doesn't lie, cheat, or steal. And it's a really cool thing when we're able to make a positive impact that true results can happen. And so on the personal side, I've been married to my wife, Erica, for just over a year now, just moved into the Eagan neighborhood and have been absolutely loving the season of life. So life has been great. Life has been kind, and business is doing well. We're counting our blessings.
Nice. So what's biggest lesson you've learned year one of marriage?
Be first to listen, second to console, and third to love. Always being willing to listen, hear what the opportunity is, and don't act, console. I think that there's so much in life where we are, let's fix it, especially in the business world. You got a problem. I'm a salesperson. I can fix it. I'm going to offer a solution and solve and then move on. And that's sometimes I think we have in marriage, especially like in the way that our marriage is set up. The role of the husband is not always necessarily to just fix. It's there to be an emotional anchor and a stone to rest upon. And sometimes you don't need to solve. You just need to rest. And so I think that when we're able to listen, console, that's where that love comes through, because our role as husband is to set up our wives for success. And if we can do that by being stable and being there for our partners, that's where I think I've learned the most amount of lessons.
So what's your true batting average on, taking that step in the heated moment versus the natural, inclination to, go grab the hammer and nails and start fixing it?
That's right. Every day you learn something new, and swiftly reminded often about my opportunities for improvement.
We all are. So that's
right.
It's okay. When I think about my own marriage, I was married young though. I was, 22 years old. And I always wanted to solve. And once I learned not to solve, but for me, my family, when I grew up, wasn't emotional at all. So I got to this really weird state where then she'd just cry. And I was like, you're there. I have no idea what to do right now. Like, just kind of like pat her on the back. Like,
They're there.
It's okay. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think my biggest lesson was learning how to walk someone through that. And more importantly, it taught me to also go live in that state for a moment when I was going through stuff versus, well, it's a problem, water off the back like a duck, let's go fix it.
Keep going, move on.
It's like, well, you probably should live in that emotion for a minute and then go fix it. So we're ripping on some failures today. I'm hoping you have some good ones I can poke holes in at and, go down a deeper path and see where that failure really was rooted inside of. But I'm gonna toss in your court. What do we get to pull apart today?
Yeah, I was listening to a couple of the other podcast guests that you had, and I appreciated the sincerity of their tone, and specifically the one that talked about choosing the wrong market. And we all know in business, if you choose the wrong market, you're going to do some pretty devastating stuff to your business. And I thought about what is a failure that I had in my life that could be relative to that scenario. And instead of choosing the wrong market, I think the lesson that I learned was choosing the wrong mentor. When I first started off in my career, I was young pup, just started in the family business, doing sales, and I got paired with a mentor that I didn't necessarily know because I didn't have really many contacts. I mean, my college fraternity had some people in the business world, but it was mostly centered towards like either nurses or people in high tech space, not middle market, smaller businesses. And so this guy that I got paired with was a contact that was in the industry in the payment processing space. And I remember getting to know him and kind of figuring out like, who is this guy? What is this guy doing? And we went on this one sales call together, and I was trying to pitch a merchant processing solution called a point of sale. It's that thing where you swipe at a restaurant. And we went into this Thai place. And I remember just listening to this guy talk, and it's like, man, I don't like your tonality. You're kind of like talking down to this person. They were an immigrant family. And I didn't like how he was like over explaining things and treating them like they were kind of not understanding. And we started having the lunch, and I learned never shit where you eat, and never sell while you're eating, and especially like for a client that's offering food as a service. And so we order our food, and my mentor orders something that I'm allergic to, very, very allergic to shrimp, can't do it, can't even be in the same room. Countless stories of situations where I had to leave. And I told my mentor, like, hey man, I'm really sorry. Is there any chance that you could order something else? I'm really allergic to shrimp. And he's like, oh no, it's fine. I'll sit on the other side of the table. It was a 4x4 table. It was around me at any time. And I remember like him dismissing me and pushing it off, and thinking back, wow, he just doesn't listen. And I think that was my first lesson of what does it mean to fail in sales, is to choosing the wrong mentor that doesn't actually listen or care, but not listening to the potential clients. And so as we were eating the meal, he was spitting on me, and all of a sudden my arm started getting red, my throat started to close, and it was just this rough situation. And I had to leave. We didn't get the client, and I had to, unfortunately, go home and rest. I was done for the day because the Benadryl started to kick in.
So falling asleep.
Yeah, it was atrocious. So I think the lesson learned was the importance of finding the right mentor. The other scenario that I thought of is because that's more of like not necessarily my failure of choosing the wrong or being mentored by the wrong person, but I think of another scenario where I failed was I was being mentored by a different person, different year. I think it was like 3 or 4 years later, and we would have monthly meetups. And he would challenge me like, hey, Don, I want you to read this book. Give me a book report the next time we get together. I was a young guy, didn't necessarily put all my effort into it, and I lied to him. I said, yeah, I read the book. I read the back of the book, or I read like the cliff notes of it, and I gave the basic scenario or basic synopsis of it. And I said, yeah, great book. Couldn't recommend it enough. He's like, well, what was something that impacted you about this book? Like, how are you going to change a process from this book? And he could tell immediately. I mean, I am so transparent when it comes to my facial expressions. I'm terrible with lies, and so it's just not worth it. And it came to the conclusion of he caught me. And I was in this moment of exposure. And I'll never forget that phrase that he told me of, I can tell that this is not something that you're truly passionate about. I wish you all the best of luck in business. And it was that deflation and that moment that really calcified my drive for what does it mean to make a promise. And when you're choosing a mentor, it's not just picking apart at somebody's time. Somebody's investing into you. And the fact that I let the scenario happen was a huge hit to my ego. It was a huge, devastating thing to me because it was somebody that believed in me. And I proved them wrong. And so I think that was my big moment of, gosh, I could never let that happen again.
Interesting. So let's go back to I'm just flabbergasted that some guy's like, I'm going to still eat shrimp.
Yeah. What a goofy thing.
Normally I tell people, because I'm allergic to fish and seafood,
Yeah.
like I'll if I go to a Crave, I normally can't, because like just in the air, I'm like, this is no bueno.
That's right.
And most people, the minute they hear, like, can it even be at the table? Like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Just, don't spit on me.
Exactly.
So how would you handle it differently? Because I'm sitting there. How old are you?
I was I think I was in my early 20s.
And they were?
Probably 40 or so.
Okay, so they're in their 40s.
They knew.
20s.
He had a couple kids. He knew.
Right, but if someone listening right now is that old, I want you, let's rewind. You say, or please order something different. they say, no, I'm going to still eat this. What do you do differently next time?
I think the thing that I would do differently is really communicate, hey, I'm sorry that this is an inconvenience for you. If we need to reschedule and pick a different restaurant, I think that might be best. Standing up to yourself and knowing your limits is something that lesson really taught me.
Interesting. So what do you think he would have received that, though? I mean, 'cause it sounds like you already spoke up kind of at least twice at it. Don't you ultimately think they just wouldn't have received it? Is there like a more dramatic play that you should kind of move at? Would you just stood up and left? Would you be like, hey, I can't do this? Well, what other options are there?
Yeah, I think that if there was that third barrier or that third refusal, I think that talks more to the individual's character than anything else. You can only meet people where they're at. And if there's limitations or incapabilities that the other party has, if you don't respect those or at least try to meet them where they're at, that speaks more to you than anything else. And so, yeah, would love to be like Jesus and flip tables in the temple, but I think it would be most appropriate to just say, this is something that we are both on the same page about. I'm really sorry. I can't conduct myself in this way. I have a health risk. Wish you all the best of luck.
Yeah.
Because if they refuse for that third time, come on, man.
Just strange.
Yeah. That'd be bizarre.
They need to get on this episode. We need to unpack why this person wouldn't just order different food. So do you still believe, though, I'm flabbergasted by a statement, I used that twice tonight, we're going to have to pick a new word for the third time, that you would not sell while eating. Do you still believe in that? Like, over a meal, you're not going to try and make a sale?
I think that there's a time and place for all things. You know, in a business conversation, absolutely. There's nothing like breaking bread with good people. And you and I have had lunches together, and we've shared meals, shared drinks, and shared memories. And I think that there's that time and place. But when it's time to discuss business papers, it demands a certain respect for both parties. And sliding a paper across, and there's food, and there's drinks, and what if there's water on the table? I just don't think that when we engage with our process, that we hold ourselves in a little bit more reverence for the opportunity instead of making it more of a convenience. Because if we were to sell a product or a service, the client should feel it. And I think that dinner and drinks could follow as a celebration afterwards. But treat the deal with the respect that it deserves and celebrate when it is deserved.
Wouldn't you say, though, most deals, though, are made at the meal and the paperwork afterwards is just kind of a formality?
No, there's a certain difference between sliding the contract across the table and creating those conversations. So there is a distinction when it comes to having business lunches or business conversations versus those finalization of documents.
Interesting. So have you, since then, had any scenarios where you've closed a deal at a lunch with some pen and paper?
Not on pen and paper. There's been some napkin numbers discussed.
It's always the best. Once you can get a number in front of them, then they keep eating and hanging out with you. You're like, hey, we're good.
That there's something working out.
Deal's done. So then example 2.0, Don, we have to ask, why'd you lie?
I think it was my own naivete. It was the misunderstanding of the expectation of the mentor. And I think it was my own personal opportunity for growth. I think that we all lie, we all cheat, we all steal. And think about it in our youth. I mean, those are lessons that we learn consistently throughout our lives. Sometimes we don't think about stealing, especially in the business world, about stealing like I'm stealing property or I'm stealing a piece of corporate, or the company property or whatever. But sometimes we steal time. We steal time away from our partners. We steal time away from individuals or clients and not realize what we do. And it's not because of our own fault. We as humans are consistently failing. But I think it's that ability for growth and recognition of admitting ourselves. Because yes, I lied and it sucked. But I think the ability to reflect and grow on it is the true difference. Reverence and remembrance to how we can improve is the greatest ability for us all to receive.
So where did you grow from it, would you say? What was the biggest lesson you have internalized right now from that moment?
When you say something, do it. And if you haven't had the opportunity to do it, because sometimes we do get busy. Sometimes we are not able to read the full email or the footnotes or something is missed. And if there is a part of you that forgot something or did not live up to the 100%, still sometimes you got to submit papers at 75% because submitted is submitted. But as long as you're able to communicate, hey, this is what I got out of it. I was not able to finish, for this example, I was not able to finish the book, got a couple of chapters in. This is something that I took out of it. Owning up to your failures is different than lying about your successes.
So would you say that, I mean, because we look at lying, like the art of lying, the passion of lying, the motivation of lying, there's always something deeper behind it. In that moment when you lied, would you say it was a fear of your image being tainted? Would you say it was fear of needing to hold a standard that's always been pushed upon you as a kid? What would you say was the foundation that caused
We're getting into
that
Freudian
moment?
concepts. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the shame, the fear of shame. Holding ourselves up in the business community, we oftentimes think of ourselves on this pedestal, or we're all going to be, these Simon Sinexes. We're going to be super successful, and we're never at fault or never at failure. And I think when we're caught in those compromised situations, it's more comfortable to bury yourself in the lie, to pile on yourself. But when you can have that ability to see yourself or be aware of your own essence in those moments, I think that's what defines leadership in our world today. Know when you make a mistake and make it well. There's the whole terminology of fail faster. We all make mistakes every single day. But how can you learn from those mistakes faster than your competition?
How are you failing fast right now?
Man, I'm learning every day. I think that there's, especially with this new role in managing the sales and account management team, I think that there are moments where I'm not sure if I'm failing or not. And it's that time of self-reflection, and I offer up my adorations to God, and I have humble moments of what does it mean to do good, and did I do good today? Reflecting on what was the conversation, or how did I leave this person feeling after a conversation? And I'm sure I fail. I'm sure I mess up, and I'm not the most kindest or courteous of people to all people. You are an enemy in somebody's story. But the ability to recognize when you did it intentionally and growing from those moments, I think, is what defines us as leaders.
Who do you see over the next year you'll become the greatest enemy towards inside your own company? And it'll be your job to address it, to help them overcome it. Because I think enemies most of the time is a result of a lack of communication. If we really break it down, it's all it comes down to, or understanding. If we go back to the episode with Eric Beckler and swim lanes, right? Because you see your lane, you see your lanes next to you, don't see beyond it. Or even Emmett and I have great moments where it's too tight and smash, and 10 minutes later you're like, oh, again, a communication error. So I guarantee you, being in a leadership role, you're gonna piss some people off, especially inside your own company. Where do you think, because your own weakness, it could happen the fastest? And then how are you going to overcome that?
Yeah, the whole philosophy of an unstoppable object meets an unmovable force, or something like that. I think that where that could come from is not necessarily conflict or upsetting, but having contention. And there's a phenomenal book called The Good Fight. And that was the book that my leadership team, we follow EOS. And so our L10 team was charged with reading in Q4 The Good Fight. And it talked about what does it mean to have not fights, but healthy contention. And we operate in a very, very fast-paced space in the digital marketing world. And if we're not constantly challenging each other, if we're not pushing each other, we're settling. And when you get fat and happy is when deals fall apart and clients get upset. And so I think where those challenges and opportunities arise will be not only with my leadership team itself, but I think with my team. I hope to have a place of mutual respect for each other, because without each other, neither of us win. And we have to collaborate and be true partners in process to make sure that things work and run smoothly.
Interesting. So throughout your 8 years at your company, I'm sure you've tried some sort of trends to make you more successful, especially, as people know, I tried the CEO morning, right? And in the end, in my opinion, just a giant fallacy. Have any of those experiences in your life that you can speak to in the moment of like, yeah, I tried to do this. In my opinion, it's just a myth. It's not worth the time or not worth the energy. It doesn't actually produce XYZ result.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said on the last podcast. And I think I emulate that conversation a little bit about the frivolous acts of networking. going out into the community and just throwing business cards, showing up at every single event, and trying to get my name out there. I'm really proud of the intentional networking that I've done in my career, especially in the last 5 to 6 years. But when I first got started, I still needed to learn how to produce my name. There's a time and place to be subjected to the will of the community. And I fell on my face plenty of times. And I think that that's something that people are afraid to do in our world today, of go out, learn when it doesn't necessarily quote unquote matter. Figure out what is the pitch, what is the process, how do you communicate about yourself, how do you say certain things in certain orders so that you feel more confident and more comfortable, so that when it does matter later in your career, you kind of have a basis of familiarity to stand on. So I think it's that frivolous acts of networking.
So this year you talked about people are afraid to fall on their face. So what actions are you taking this year that result in you just face planting, doing what I like to say, eating dirt?
Yeah, well, it's currently the 19th of the month, so I haven't fallen on my face yet. So
Yeah.
that's good. But I think that it's recognizing that when it does happen, when the inevitable will happen, to be okay with it. You know, there's a Stoic philosophy of it's not how things happen to you that matters, it's how you react to them that defines who you are. And if we're able to walk in a space of appreciation for when those inevitable things happen, that we can be thankful for them. Because when we're uncomfortable or when we eat dirt, there's lessons to be learned. And if you're not learning, you're dying. And I'm living every day, brother.
Yeah, and you have to die more to live, right? I mean, you have to face plant, get near death in order to grow. And if you don't have that, it's kind of the opposite you talked about when you get fat and happy is when you die. But I think you can never even get to fat and happy if you're not, continually failing and learning from that. I think the true failure comes from when you stop the failing piece, right? And it's when you don't willingly go, hey, we're going to go try something that I'm not good at, that I don't know. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt really bad. I'm going to grow a lot. And I think the reason people don't do that, in my opinion, and the crux of it all, if you truly want to stretch and do something you've never done, you have to go ask people to help teach you. And most people don't want to admit, I don't know, I don't have the intellect, I'm not smart enough. And all of a sudden you go, well, if you look around, I think the best example is I meet so many people. I go, man, you are very intellectual, you're very smart, you know a lot. But what's fascinating is you get to know them more, they become less intellectual in your opinion, less smart, less know-it-all, because they have their one thing they're really good at. So yeah, when you first meet them, you're like, holy cow, you're really smart. And you're like, well, no, you're really smart about one thing that I know nothing about. And that's not a slight at all. I'm a big fan of the 1% rule. You'll be good at one thing, and that'll fill only 1% of the 99 other things you have to be good at to succeed, especially in business or even in life. So you have to go find 99 other people to stick on your plane to fly forward. And so I think more people need to be willing to sit down and go, hey, I'm not that good. I'm not important. I'm not as smart as I think I am. So you can try something new, and no one's going to be embarrassed around you. When I sat at a table across from Don, I was like, yeah, merchant processing, card swiping. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. Other than like 2 code words he used that involved code. I was like, I know what those are. So inside of that, though, as we're talking to people about those challenges and about overcoming them and about not partaking in these fallacies, we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of quotes. What is something the audience can actually take that's tangible and bring home with them and go, hey, this week I listened to Don. I heard his story about mentorship. I heard his fallacy about the random acts of networking. But what do I apply to my life now for the next week?
Yeah, there's a comment that I wanted to make about what does it mean to humble yourself? And we are all human. We're going through this experience, and none of us know what's going on. We're just trying to hold on to this mud of dirt and just trying to take one day at a time, one step. And I think that the biggest thing that we can take away is when you're walking into an environment, either if it's a networking event or if it's a mentorship environment, don't lose yourself in getting caught up in the moment, but truly walk into that opportunity with the reverence for the other. I think that the mistake that I made was thinking that my time is more valuable than the others, but they were offering up their knowledge and expertise to me. And if I were to treat them with as much respect as I gave myself in that moment, I think we would have had a much different scenario, and I would still have the partnership and relationship that I have with them today. So walk in with intentionality, create a plan. And if I were somebody listening, looking for a mentor, don't just walk up to a mentor and say, hey, I'm in this industry. You have great experience. Are you interested in being a mentor? Walk up to them and say, I've done my research on your background. I'm really fascinated about how you did X in this scenario or this industry. I'd like to meet with you on a quarterly, monthly, weekly, etc. basis to talk about these 3 main pillars of where I'm going in my career. If you're able to have those types of conversations to really elevate the language in which you choose to use with those mentors, I think that you'll not only have more success in people wanting to engage with you, but you set up the mentors for success to help you. Because in business, we're not selling just products. There's no such thing as product. Everything is a solution. And the product that you're selling is their time. You're trying to sell them on why it's worth it for them. And if you can have that convincing moment of, I want to learn from you, everybody wants to help in some manner. If you can help them help you, I think that's where the success will be.
Yeah, it's oftentimes when a mentor gets asked to be a mentor, it's more stressful in their mind at first than it actually is, because you're forcing them to put the context around what you need, versus when you go on a sales call and you want to meet with someone, it's always an age-old adage, right? Pick 2 days, pick 2 times, and then let them tell you they don't work, right? It's always about narrowing it down. More options is not good. So when you go to a mentor, yeah, have that list. This is what I want help with. This is where I need to grow. And I would love to hear, obviously, still you want their feedback. Where else do I need to grow that I'm blind to? Because we all are definitely horses with blinders on all the time. But I do have to ask, I don't like this peanut butter dark beer. It's rough. I don't know how your berry raz something.
Yeah, the raspberry goose, I think something.
Yeah, are you vibing on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a big sort of beer guy in general, or whatnot. So, with that being said, I mean, I can't complain. It's better than. Yeah, I don't know. The flavor's good as far as I mean, it's a hint of raspberry, but it's not like getting punched in the face. So yeah, better than I guess most beers I've tried, even alcoholic ones. But that's not saying much because I'm really not a beer guy.
Are you a beer guy?
I don't drink the most amount of beer. I'm a big Guinness guy, but
Okay.
that might just be a heritage thing. My ancestors calling down. But I appreciate this beer because it's a brand new experience for me. I've never had carbonated chocolate milk before, so it's really unique. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn what that tastes like.
Carbonated chocolate milk. I wish I could give it that much credit. I'm just not. I'm gonna give this a solid 2 out of 10. And that might be harsh, but that's just my rating. What are you tossing out there?
I'm really thankful for the opportunity to try it.
Perfect. I think you'd be a little higher. I'm voting I'm gonna guess you're at like a 4 or 5.
I was gonna give it. So this is a little controversial. I'll give it a 6 or a 7, but that's using the starting reference of a lot of other beers I've been forced to drink, and I'm really not a beer guy. If I didn't cover that already, so by contrast, because this is non-alcoholic, I think there's less beer flavor to it, and it's more just the raspberry. So to that extent, I'll give it a passing grade. But if you're a beer fan, I think this is definitely under 5 out of 10, probably.
I just think we grabbed the wrong one, Don.
This one is probably a lot better. So,
well, I appreciate you coming on today. I know you're plenty busy, and it's a Friday night we're shooting it, so pretty cool that you still made time for it. Any last bits of knowledge, smart remarks, advice you want to throw out there?
I got a couple smart remarks, but I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I think that it is very rare to find true friends in the business world, and thank you for investing your time into me and being there for my wife and I as we welcome you into our home for our housewarming party. It really means a lot that it's not just a business conversation that we get to have or that we have to have, but I think it's the personalities of you and your wife that we truly enjoy being around, and thank you for your time and investing into this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, audience, if you're ever looking for general construction advice, he did remodel half his home on his own between his knowledge and his father-in-law's, because he actually asked for help. So hit him up. But again, mentors are important. Knowing how to ask for them is more important. But by far the most important thing, if you're hanging out with Don, get rabbit hole bourbon, right?
Absolutely.
Not chocolate milk. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you all.
Took quite a fall, didn't we, Master Bruce?
And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.